So, my name is Grace Hardy, and I started accounting when I was 18 years old. I went and did an apprenticeship at a top 10 firm, got qualified, left at 21 thinking, right, this is the time that I'm going to go travel. I never did a gap year or anything like that. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
going to go to Southeast Asia and I'm going to find myself like every other girl.
Yeah.
And then I realised that it was rainy season and that I couldn't go yet. And so I was like, what do I do for 3 months? Because I'm going to have to get a job because otherwise I'm going to run out of money. And I didn't really want to go back to work in hospitality like I did when I was a teenager. And then I was like, oh yeah, I'm a qualified accountant. Let me just set up a little firm and do a little bit of work for 3 months and then I'll shut it down come January. And I'll go to Bali and I'll find myself. But unfortunately, slash fortunately, it grew a lot bigger than I thought it would ever grow, and I couldn't go on holiday because I had clients and responsibilities and speaking engagements, etc. So now I've just sort of ended up here just by pure luck.
Wow. What a story. Number one, did you ever get to go on holiday again after that? Or have you been stuck working ever since?
I've been stuck. I went to Amsterdam for 3 days and then I went on a working holiday to Tenerife for a week, which was lovely, but yet to go
Fantastic.
travelling.
Yeah, wow. How long ago was the proposed trip to Bali, and why haven't you gone back?
It was meant to be at the beginning of this year, and I just haven't gone because I've just been so busy.
Yeah. So 3 months, you had a plan, 3 months, I'm going to set up my firm, maybe earn a bit of pocket money for my travels. How did you go from 3 months of maybe I'll give this a go to being so busy that you can't travel, booking speaking engagements? How does that even happen?
So for me, I'm obviously a proud member of Gen Z, and I
Hell yeah.
thought, how does one grow a business? Oh yes, social media. So I set up an Instagram page and a TikTok, and I was like, I'm just gonna post bits and bobs about my life, which obviously didn't do well because if you're going to start posting on social media, you can't ego post because I came to the realization that actually, unfortunately, no one cares about me, which is a difficult pill to swallow sometimes. But
Absolutely. Yeah.
no one cares what I do in a day. What they do care about is how they can save money, how their money can work for them, making sure that they understand that they can read a paycheck, what their tax code means, etc. Like bringing value to the table. So when my content started doing that, that's when I had more inquiries and people going, okay, there's something in this. Let me give this girl a follow and like see what else she's going to come out with. And so that's what I started doing on TikTok and Instagram. Then I moved to LinkedIn a bit later because for me, when I started, I was 21. I thought LinkedIn's for old people. I'm not going to post on there. What a waste of time. And I was so wrong. LinkedIn is such a good social media platform for amazing connections because there are literally incredible people on there. Most of the opportunities I've had have come from LinkedIn, from me just posting authentically as myself. So I don't post hacks on LinkedIn. I post my journey and how I'm finding it. And it's very raw and authentic. And basically, it's just like a mini diary there.
This is fantastic. I'm loving the flexibility that you've had to maybe I'll give this a go. Maybe I'll jump on TikTok and Instagram. This is what I'm comfortable with, to finding your voice, which is a journey itself, to not ego post. I love that phrase. And I'd love you to break down what is an ego post?
So an ego post is basically something about yourself that you think is fab, but actually no one else cares. So, for example, what I eat in a day or what I get up to as a business owner. Yeah, some people will care, but that video isn't going to do incredibly well because if you don't have a large following, you're just like every other business owner. So, what makes you stand out? You have no USP. Why should someone watch what you do in a day when they don't even know who you are?
That's fantastic. So how long did it take you to go from I'm posting a bit of content about my life to I think I need to to do a bit of a switch. I need to change this up. How long did that take?
Too long, because no one
Too
told
long.
me. Too long. I think it probably took me a month or 2 months.
Mm-hmm. And
Because I
how
was
often
like,
are you posting a day? Are you posting once a day, once every couple of days, or is it 10 times a day?
so when I started, it was just every couple of days,
Mm-hmm.
because I hadn't put time to bulk create, which is really important if you want to grow a personal brand.
Yeah,
I
sure.
was waiting till the evening and then trying to rack my brain for a TikTok idea, and then sitting there at like 8 o'clock at night trying to put something together, which just isn't the way to do it. And so the quality would be very low because it's not pre-planned, it's very rushed.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think in January, literally January 2nd, had a TikTok go viral.
What
And
was that
then from
post?
there, pardon?
What was the viral post?
It was a new HMRC tax legislation. Fascinating, I
Cool.
know.
Yeah, that's so cool that that's the one that went viral. There's a lot to unpack there. That something that seemingly so uninteresting or not sexy is the thing that really kicked off for you. What kind of insight?
I think people go to social media to either be educated or entertained. And that post
Wow.
was educating because it's a new piece of legislation that wasn't really in the news because no one really knew about it, yet it probably affected millions of people. So the piece of legislation was that third-party platforms like Amazon, like eBay, like Vinted, like Deliveroo had to share their information with HMRC so that HMRC can see if the amount that you're declaring on your tax return is the same amount that these companies have on their database, which is obviously
Wow.
incredibly important for people to know and can be life-changing if you didn't realise that you needed to do a tax return, for example. So then that creates a lot of questions. Oh my God, does this apply to me? I haven't been doing this for years. Are HMRC going to come after me? And so that's basically why I think that video went viral.
Yeah, and so the questions that you're getting on that, does that spark a new content series? How do you take that one successful post? Obviously, you're posting for a bit, you're creating content. How do you take that success and run with it?
So it's answering questions in the comments because that's a really good way to engage people and that boosts the algorithm on TikTok. Another thing I started doing was obviously you get all the people in the comments that think that they know better than you, that aren't qualified accountants and think that they know what they're talking about. So then I did another video on 5 misconceptions of the new HMRC
Oh,
tax rule, for
great.
example. And
Oh,
so I did
that's
a couple of
a
those as
clever way to
well.
do that.
Yeah, and so obviously those got a lot of views too. I posted a video about the exact same thing back in November, which had hardly any views because everyone was like, what's this? This is really boring. I reposted that video and it did so well because it was on topic and trending.
No way. Okay. Wow. I feel like there's so much here. I want to go down every rabbit hole with you. There's so much interesting content, especially because I know a lot of this audience won't necessarily consider TikTok as this amazing opportunity to, one, speak directly to an audience, two, get really great comments and questions back to kind of feed that content pipeline. That's really quite interesting. You mentioned before about pre-planning content versus kind of like flying by the seat of your pants kind of content of racking your brain at night. What is your process? Can you break down how do you ideate on a content idea? How do you script your content? Do you just dot point, like what's your process?
So it really varies. I do 2 types of videos. So I do like talking head videos where I sit in front of the camera and give a spiel about tax, basically. And there's other videos that I do that are like slideshows, for example. And then actually there's a third type, which is just a 7-second video with just like written information on it. Those are 3 types of videos that I do. And the slideshow and the video are actually just the same information, but people are different types of learners. Some people want to sit there and watch a video. Other people want to interact on social media and go through a slideshow. So those two
Wow.
are always the same information, just in different types, which is perfect because then you only have to do research and you've got 2 posts already instead of just one.
That's so clever. I feel like it sounds so obvious. Like create content based on learning styles and based on the way that we digest information, not just on the topic itself. That's so clever. How did you come across that kind of insight and that tactic, or is it just testing?
It's literally just testing. So there's a lot of videos that are just that video with information on it. And I was like, let me give that a try. And then it just did really well out of nowhere. And I was like, okay, like maybe there's something in this. My friends like to take the mick out of me because they're the most boring videos ever. But unfortunately, they do well, and I can't help that. Just every time I post one of them, it's always at least 10k views. And when I post it on Instagram, it's sort of the same thing. Recently, I had one that's nearly at 400,000 views, and it's just that still video with information on top of it, which is mental.
So when you say like a 7-second video, that's like a little kind of, is it a loop, or is it just like a snippet of you on your computer or writing or doing something a little bit mundane, but with text over the top that takes longer than 7 seconds to read? Is that the idea?
Yeah, so it's a loop. So it's usually just a picture of nature or like a sunset or something. And then it will be like average savings per age group, for example, or how much money you should be spending on rent to be able to build wealth at the same time, or different tax allowances, for example.
I'm so inspired by this idea. I feel like there's so many potential ways to use it. How do you balance that type of content that it might be, I guess, impersonal or not relationship based with building a personal brand? Obviously, you've got a bit of a following now. You're getting a lot of views. How do you balance doing something that isn't talking head with this more kind of generic background nature, not Grace Hardy's?
I think for me on TikTok, I post a mixture. So sometimes I will just post those like generic videos, but then I'll post the odd one, a 7-second video of me, for example, talking about what I do. And it's important just to switch it up because it's important to give value, but also show your personality at the same time. Sometimes you can't just do that in one video. But also you do want to grow a following. And so those educational videos is sometimes where you pick up followers. You will also pick up followers from your personal brand. But when you are a small creator, you still have to give value away.
Yeah, that's fantastic. So you talked about the different types of content you're creating. When you sit down to, I guess, plan your content, how far in advance are you planning? What do you think about? How do you go about planning your content, and how far in advance are you doing that?
So it really depends on what my diary looks like. I personally have ADHD, so I start new projects left, right, and centre without really thinking if I've got the time for it or not.
Yeah.
And so if I'm really, really busy, I will bulk create those generic videos in an evening, for example, just pop a couple of hours aside. And then that's like a month's worth of content done. And then in my calendar, if I have a free day, then I will block that day out for content creation, and I will sit down and try and make a couple of talking head videos that I can post on Instagram and on TikTok. But it's just making sure that it works for you. I think everyone's like, post 3 times a day, and posting 3 times a day is great and you will grow faster because you're posting more, but really don't put the pressure on yourself. I remember I was like, right, now I need to post 3 times a day, and it was actually making me really stressed, and I was like, this isn't enjoyable anymore. Like sometimes I run a business, I run multiple businesses now, so sometimes I don't have the time to post on TikTok, or I'm away in a treehouse with no service for the weekend. And it's okay not to post every single day, but just show up as regularly and consistently as you can.
I love that. I like tailoring a content plan to the type of lifestyle and the type of balance, work-life balance that you want to maintain, not because someone on the internet said, oh man, you got to post 8 times, 3 times a day. What are you doing? The algorithm's coming for you. It's a really fantastic, balanced, healthy way to approach that.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, if you do want to post 3 times a day, like be my guest, absolutely go for it. But I think, especially as an accountant, you're balancing all of your clients and your workload, and social media is usually just something on the side of it. It's not your entire business. So, for example, I post 5 times a week on LinkedIn, and I have 3 Instagrams that I post 3 to 5 times a week on, and a TikTok I post every day on. That is a lot of posting and a lot
That's
of
a
content.
lot of posting.
So it's a lot of posting. And so I don't expect everyone to do the same. It's just for me personally, I don't really market anywhere else. Social media is my marketing. And so I know if I put time into that, my business will grow, but it might not necessarily be the same for someone else. So they don't need to spend all that time posting.
Yeah. So it sounds like when you started your firm, the social media side of things kind of came hand in hand. It was like, I'm gonna start my firm, but I'm also going to post on social media. Obviously, there's a bit of trial and error. There's a bit of getting that content, like comfortability or comfort rather, getting used to your style and the type of content your audience wants. When did you see it really? Obviously, you had that post in January kickoff, but when did you see it starting to pay off? Like, when did you go, okay, I'm getting clients from this, I'm getting inquiries from this? When did that happen for you?
I think around February or March earlier this year. For me personally, I remember seeing people going, build a personal brand and you'll get invited to cool things and all that sort of stuff. And I went, yeah, good joke. Like, an accountant can't really have a personal brand because we're so boring. Like, we're literally so dull. Like, who wants to listen to us? And people going, well, I post a TikTok and I get clients. And I was like, good joke. Come on now. Like, I need to be going to networking events and all this sort of stuff. But I think in March, I was handed some really amazing opportunities that came around because I had been posting consistently on social media. And I think it's really important to say, however creepy it sounds, that everyone is watching all of the time. And for some people, that's a bit weird because it is. But just because people aren't engaging with your post doesn't mean they haven't seen it.
That's fantastic advice. I need to heed that advice myself. I might post something, I get 5 likes, I might get a couple hundred views. I go, well, that was a lot of effort for nothing. Yeah. But what you're saying is if you post consistently enough and people can see that in your content, it's going to pay off eventually. And it sounds like you have a post go viral January 2nd. It takes a month, takes 2 months to really start seeing the measurable difference in your firm.
Not necessarily. There was a lot of growth in January, February. But for me, it's not just about accounting. For me, I genuinely want to help people. And obviously, I did an apprenticeship and I speak very openly about it online. Because for me, I'm personally very dyslexic. And so I never wanted to go to university because I knew I would really struggle. On top of that, university is really expensive and it's not something that I could afford. And so I didn't know an alternative at the time. No one had told me about an apprenticeship. And so for me, I just really wanted to spread the word that there is this alternative where your qualification and your degree is paid for and you get paid a salary. I think I started at £20,000 when I was 18 years old, which is a lot of money for an 18-year-old, but no one's really shouting about it. And so that's what I was doing on LinkedIn as well. And I think the Department of Education got in touch with me around that time and said, look, we've been seeing you post on social media and your story is amazing. Will you come do a talk for us at the Oval? Wow. And I was like, yes, you know who I am? Like, that's so weird. But yes, I'll be there. And it's the same sort of thing. I do a lot of work for my awarding body, AAT. And that initially stemmed from LinkedIn. They went, we saw you're posting a lot about apprenticeships and you did an apprenticeship. And you did your exams with us. Do you want to come in the office and have a chat with us? And I was like, obviously I do. Yes, I'll be there.
That's awesome. And so, like, the goal, it sounds like, wasn't if I talk about apprenticeships enough, someone will ask me to talk about apprenticeships in a paid opportunity or on a larger stage. This was just a topic that you were personally passionate about, and because you had that opportunity, you wanted to talk about that with others and hopefully inspire others to that. It sounds like if you had gone in with the goal, hey, I want speaking opportunities with the Department of Education about apprenticeships, you might have approached it differently.
Definitely. And I think something that is so important about social media is that you have to be so authentic. There is nothing worse than seeing someone on social media and meeting them in real life and they're a completely different person.
Oh my gosh.
And number 2 is to make content and to come up with lots of content ideas, you have to be passionate about it and you have to love it. So I speak about tax because I'm passionate about it. I think it's really important that it's taught. I speak about apprenticeships. Again, it's something I'm passionate about. And I speak about financial education because that's what's really important to me. And if you make content around things that you're passionate about, you're never going to run out of content ideas because you could talk about it all day. And that's what's so important. And so brands and other people will see you talking about something that you really care and you're really passionate about. And then you can take that energy and do a talk about it, and people will come away feeling inspired because they can see your energy when you're talking about it.
Yeah, I love that. I hear people say this word a lot, authenticity. You've got to be authentic. And to the point, it almost feels like a buzzword that, like, oh, if I say I'm being authentic, I'm being authentic. Or perhaps I was talking with another guest last week about it. If I swear a lot, wow, look how authentic I am because I dropped the F-bomb in a conversation. What would you say is, I love that you said speak with passion and come from your passion. What are some other ways that you might muster or bring up that authenticity in this accounting industry? Let's say it's someone who's never done this before. How do you be authentic?
I think it's about finding your USP, your point of differentiation. So for me, when I started, I was like, okay, I need to do all these talking head videos in a suit because I'm a young female in accounting and people aren't going to take me seriously. So I used to sit there, jogging bottoms on the bottom, obviously, and then like a full suit and a blazer on top. And I would sit and I would do all these talking head videos and they would do terribly. That's because no one can relate to that. Being like authentically me is this baggy jumper, wearing some joggers, got my Crocs under the table. Like I'm just, that's what I do on a daily basis. And my point of differentiation is that I don't really look like your average accountant. When you think what's an accountant, you probably think of an old man in a jury suit, and that isn't me. So I really harness that. And so it's things like I talk about my jelly cats, for example, because I love them. And whenever I reach a new business milestone, I'll go to Selfridges on the top floor in the kids section and go buy myself a new jelly cat.
That's fantastic. I love that.
Yeah, which is fab, but it's stuff like that and wearing things that I would feel comfortable in, and being authentic is just literally being yourself. I say no to morning meetings because I'm 22 years old and I need 10 hours of sleep at night, so I don't have a meeting in my diary before 10 o'clock. And so
that's fantastic.
It's just
I like that you're
letting being yourself.
Yeah, I like that you're letting these other areas of your life come into your personal brand. Where did you find that there's almost a line where it becomes you're sharing too much of yourself? When do you ever get to turn off?
Not particularly, because accounting is very different. It's not really like I'm a lifestyle creator, for example. I think those people have a very difficult time of where's the line. For me, I talk about tax and I go out and I help people and I educate people. And so that is basically it. And if I'm having a tough time in business, I won't share that completely raw on my social media. I'll share it when there's a lesson that I've learned from it. So, for example, I'm in my 20s. I've run a business and I've been through a breakup, right? I shot this very raw video in my bedroom talking about how it's really difficult being a solo business owner, because when you're going through something personal in your life, it affects your business, because if you can't go to work because you're upset or you're feeling down, that work isn't going to get done. So that video never got posted because I sent it to my sister and she was like, that is too raw, delete it. You look terrible, go to bed.
Oh gosh, thanks sis.
Yeah, literally. But a couple of weeks later, I sat with some makeup on and then I spoke about the same thing, but it came across better because I'd more healed from the situation. I would never talk about really my personal life other than school and things I think are going to be helpful to someone else. And so I know where the line is because it's quite easy.
I like that there's a distinction there between personal and personality. So you share your personality, your authentic self, but you're not sharing your personal self, where it's like, this is my relationships, this is my family, this is my home. You're saying, no, I have these interests and this is how I turn up as me, and this is how it might be different to you turning up as you. I think that's a really cool distinction to make, because I know that a lot of people have hang-ups on personal brand because it feels like I got to share every single part of my life. Like, that feels way too...
And I think some people do find it quite difficult, because sometimes the more you share, the more relatable perhaps that people may find you. But it's just sharing what you're comfortable with. You don't have to share everything. I'm relatable anyway because I'm a young business owner, and that is enough for a lot of people. And so that's perfect. I don't need to sit there and like talk about my childhood trauma to be relatable. I'm just a young person who started a business, and other young business owners can look at that and feel related to.
Thank you for sharing that. That's really quite profound. I would love to talk about a topic that is on the tip of everyone's tongue at the moment, is this talent crisis that the accounting industry is facing. There's a lot of young people who don't want to go into accounting. It's not the sexiest industry. It's not being talked about or offered as a career path. I know that you are obviously very personally passionate about accounting and tax, and I know that you post a lot about initiatives that you're a part of to discuss the industry on a more legislative level. Do you find social media is a bit of a potential bridge to fix or maybe heal is the wrong word, but to kind of bridge this divide when we're talking about the talent crisis?
I definitely think so. For me personally, and I can only speak for myself, I never wanted to become an accountant. I don't think many people do sort of just fall into it. I initially thought the accounting industry is very stale and it's very old, and I've got a lot of personality and it may not be somewhere where I fit into. And so I was very apprehensive when I joined, being like, I really don't think these are my people, like it's not my tribe. But then when you get into it, you do find that there are other people like me. But because it has such a stigma around it, it's so difficult from the outside perspective to sort of see that. But when you get in the industry, there's so many amazing people. I also thought that it would be like a terrible discrepancy between male and female. When you get further in it, you do understand that in corporates and high up places, there is that discrepancy. And the FCA report came out this March with terrifying figures in it. But as a business owner, there's so many other female business owners that I'm such good friends with now, and they are so unbelievably supportive. Like, the community in accounting is so lovely. Like, it's not very cutthroat. If you need a template or you have a question, everyone's so willing to answer it, which is so nice. But I think by using social media to sort of show what the accounting industry is like, it really bridges that gap between this perceived expectation and the reality.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you do much content around getting people ignited and excited about becoming accountants themselves, or is it more or a mix? But do you focus more on providing value for people who might need to learn about tax for their business?
It focuses more on the value for tax, but what it does is, without realizing, is that it shows other young people that they can go into accountancy and it doesn't have to be boring, because they're seeing someone like me doing it, and there's other young accountants out there as well. And they go, oh, well, if all these people are doing it, then it can't be as boring as it looks, because they're all doing it. And so the amount of messages and DMs I get of people going, oh my God, I really want to do what you're doing. How can I start? And I do a lot of work with companies that promote apprenticeships to get more young people into accounting. And I'll do like story takeovers. And so I will do like, come with me for a day as a self-employed accountant. And then I'll go and show them and they go, okay, that looks kind of cool. Like, what can I do to get there? And so without really thinking about it, by me just posting what I'm doing and tax tips, people go, I don't have to sit in an office as an accountant. I can post on TikTok and get some clients, and that's much more appealing. Obviously, you have to go do your qualifications first, but you don't have to work with boring clients.
Yeah, that's the truth. I really like that there's this added benefit to turning up authentically, turning up as Grace, not turning up as Grace playing the accountant that you expected it to be, that like not only do you get to do the work the way you want to do it, you can run a firm the way you want to run it, but just by virtue of being you, other people like you can feel inspired and see you almost as this like mentor into an industry that they didn't expect to care about in the first place. And that's all through you turning up, authentically providing value. That's really quite profound.
Yeah, I love it. It makes me so happy because I think it's difficult to go into an industry when you can't see anyone that looks like yourself. I think when I went into the industry, yeah, there were like females, but there weren't any young females really harnessing social media. There was no one close to my age. And so now I get happy because maybe I can be that person for someone else to look into the industry and go, oh, well, I can see a bit of myself in Grace. And if Grace is doing it, then I can do it. And then they do it. And I think that's so amazing. But it's just showing people that it really doesn't have to be boring and stale. I literally love all my clients so much. They're all in the creative industry. And what they do is literally so cool. Like, literally love it so much.
That's awesome. What kind of clients are they? Like creators? Are they musicians? Are they artists? Or what kind of like ICP do you have?
Literally everything. So a couple of them are creators, influencers, producers, directors, artists. The list goes on and on.
That's so cool. Oh my gosh. And because you turning up as yourself and getting to pick and choose, like I don't want to work with stodgy, boring freight companies, or I don't want to work with X, Y, and Z companies. You get to curate a roster of people that really inspire you in return.
Yes, completely. And
That's
I
so
just
cool.
love that so much. And it's nice because all my clients are young. And so by me being young and showing up as myself, then it means that they feel like they can relate to me because we're both young business owners going through the same thing.
That's awesome. So can you talk us through, you've told us that in 1 week you're posting 5 posts to LinkedIn. You got several posts to Instagram. You got posts to TikTok. It's a lot of content you're making. There's obviously a really big effort and lift to do that. What is your, after you post, what happens after the post or after the creation? Are you tracking leads? Are you sending people through a link tree or UTM codes? Like, is there a way you're tracking all that effort into the company, or is it just I provide good value and I see that at the end of the month the company has a lift in inquiries?
Yeah, so I'm terrible at tracking. It's probably something I should do better at. I basically just post the content and then I track like followers and analytics every week and every month. For me, inquiries at the moment isn't something I'm hugely looking at, just because I've got so many other things going on that I don't. It's not necessarily forefront of mind at the moment. It's great when those inquiries do come through, but there's other people I'm trying to target at the moment instead, so it's looking at those as well.
Oh, that's so interesting. I think that sounds pretty common or pretty on par with everyone else I've spoken to, is that like they're not really tracking what happens after they post the content and provide value. But I'm really interested in perhaps your insight, your wisdom about the analytics and how that might influence the type of content or the type of audience that you're engaging with. You mentioned you're going after a particular audience at the moment. Does that involve creating different types of content? And do you look at analytics in terms of like, this got lots of views, let's do more, or this didn't get lots of views, let's never talk about that ever again? How do you do those two things?
I think the algorithm is a very funny thing in the sense that you could post one video 1 week and it could get 100 views, and you could literally post it the week after and it could like have 1,000. So it's not taking things to heart, but understanding what's working and what isn't. If something isn't consistently working, then don't do it. But you really have to give it a try. So like, for example, when I went on my working holiday to Tenerife, I did like day one of being a digital nomad, and I did that for 5 days. And the first post didn't do anything magical, but by the end it was getting a few thousand views. But that's because you have to be consistent with it. And when you're trying something new, you really have to just try it out completely And if it's consistently not working, then like rethink about it. But you do just have to give it a try. You can't expect to try one thing and it go viral. Sometimes it definitely does, and that's absolutely fantastic, and then you found a hidden gem, but it doesn't necessarily happen every single time.
Do you find you have different audiences, or different audiences prefer different types of content? Obviously, your LinkedIn audience is very different to a TikTok audience. Instagram, TikTok might have more similarities, but do you find that you need to turn up as a different version of yourself in any way across these platforms?
Not really. I think on LinkedIn I'm a bit more vulnerable, as in I talk about my journey more, so I really just like take that wall down, for example. Whereas on Instagram and TikTok, it's just very much girl boss energy. Here's some valuable information, and I'm just being like the most helpful version of myself possible. But you shouldn't be turning up necessarily as completely different people, because then it's going back to the authenticity. If you're trying to show up as someone that you're not, then it's never going to work. And so that's what you really have to keep in mind for. It's good to look at your analytics. So, for example, on TikTok and Instagram, most of my audience are male, which I personally think is because there's a big culture around men trying to be the breadwinners and making their money work for them. And so those are the tips and tricks that I give away. Whereas on my podcast, for example, those analytics, the audience is majority female, because they probably want to better themselves, and everyone loves a podcast. So it's just really looking at that and thinking, why is it this way?
That's really interesting. I would love to learn more about your approach to your podcast. We've talked a lot about social media. A lot of the other people we've had on the podcast, we talked a lot about social media and those types of content platforms. But we haven't really dug into podcasts all that much. Could you give me some top level insight into why do you have a podcast? What are you trying to provide value wise or information wise? Why the podcast?
So for me, as I mentioned, I have ADHD and I love chatting to people. And I get to chat a lot as an accountant, but I was like, if I can chat to more people, I'd literally love that so much. And you also have to remember that in this day and age, people are much more likely to say yes to a podcast than yes to a cup of coffee, for example. So if you want to gain someone's valuable insight, you can invite them on to a podcast. So I was like, okay, I'll start a podcast and I'll chat to other young business owners and apprentices. It's called the Unconventional Podcast because I wanted everyone to have an unconventional route, to promote the fact that you don't have to go down a traditional route or go to university to be successful. And so all of the guests have taken some sort of unconventional route or had a career change late in life. So it just feels a lot more relatable to an audience when they're sitting there at their desk going, oh, I kind of want to leave, but I'm too scared because it's too late in life. I've spent like 3 years at university training for this, and I'm in this grad scheme now, and it's too late for me. And I just want to show people that it's not too late. You can start a business at any time, you can have a career change at any time and go into something new, and you'll be absolutely fine.
That's really quite cool. I would love to know how your audience might perceive you. And I know this is a hard question to answer because how could you possibly know? How do you think your audience perceives you differently on this long form, really kind of relationship, long conversation type of content like a podcast versus TikTok, which needs to be pretty snappy and you've got 7 seconds or a minute or 2 minutes?
I think, and obviously I don't know how other people perceive me, but for me it's nice to show a bit more of my personality and also selfishly to gain new skills. So before this I'd like never interviewed anyone in my entire life, and obviously now I feel a lot more comfortable to do so. I've started by getting my friends on that ran businesses, and then it sort of grew from there to people in the industry that I knew of that I was like, hey, like, do you want to come on my little podcast? And the other week I did my first podcast with a former minister, and so the guests are like such different variety, which is so nice. But for me personally, I think it shows that like I just want to promote other people. I never really was like, right, I'm going to make a personal brand for selfish reasons. For me, my mum was a nurse, for example, and so she always instilled in me to help other people before you help yourself. And so I love giving other people a platform to share their stories, because I will come away from an event and people will go, wow, you're so inspiring, you're such a role model. And for me, I don't personally think I'm that inspiring. I quit my job because I was bored and I started a business as a joke, and here we are. But there are really amazing people with actually inspiring stories. And so for me to be able to give them a platform and a safe space to open up is something that I really enjoy doing.
That's fantastic. Selfishly, I must ask, how do you go about promoting your podcast? Do you have types of content, types of channels, tactics you use to promote your podcast?
So I was very lucky in the fact that before my podcast launched, I was able to get a sponsor. So my sponsor is my awarding body, AAT, which I was over the moon for. And
That's
so
awesome.
I was very lucky in the fact that budget came out of their PR team. So they've really helped me to promote through PR, through like magazine articles about my podcast. I personally post clips on social media of my podcast, and then every week I will send an email to my mailing list, being like, this week's episode is XYZ, and you can find it here, 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 and here.
Yeah, great. And what types of social media content are you doing? Are you doing like clips, like short 1 minute, 30-second, like talking head clips, or are they audiograms, or is it just like a post of, hey, I have a podcast this week?
So it's usually just clips from the podcast. So I do it in person one. So there's literally so much content to use. I'm toying with the idea at the moment to increase some of that content to make it more personal. Clips are great, people watch them, but the conversion rate is very low because people are like, well, I've watched a clip now. Like, why would I necessarily watch the whole thing?
How
And so I've been
interesting.
toying
Okay.
with the idea of making some more personal content, like how do I get started making a podcast? What equipment do I need? Answering all those really practical questions. And so those will probably be just talking head videos or slideshows again, so that those different types of learners can still pick up the knowledge.
Yeah, that's cool. So this has been great because there's so many different avenues and channels that you play in, and they all have a version of yourself in there, and you have different impacts and different ROIs. Like, it's so cool to see some of the best content on LinkedIn that I see, and LinkedIn is a hard game. And you're on TikTok, you're on Instagram, you're on a podcast. Do you have a TV show? You're here, there, and you're here, there, and everywhere. I wonder, let's say you have to start again. You've got your firm. Maybe you're not starting it the day you start your firm. Maybe you're 6 months into your firm, 6 months, 12 months in. What would you recommend as the biggest ROI, the biggest lift in terms of growing a firm through a personal brand, through content creation? What is your 30, 60, 90? What is your 3-month plan to go from, I don't have any of this stuff, to, okay, I'm doing this now?
The first thing I do would be to set yourself as like an authority. So give yourself credibility. Loads of people will start a video with going, did you know about this tax rule, blah, blah, blah. Hey, my name's Grace and I've been an accountant for X amount of years and I've worked with FTSE 100 companies and I'm going to help you become more financially free. Something like that, because it gives you credibility already in the audience that doesn't know who you are. And so they've already then built trust with you because you've said FTSE 100. You've said, I've done this for X amount of years. So it's starting with small things like that because no one knows who you are.
What's the alternative? What are other people doing that might not? Because I see the difference, but maybe the difference is subtle to some folks.
A difference to what?
So you're saying you start with the topic and a validator of like, this is the topic, and hey, this is why my opinion is worth something. Here's a validation point. What is the wrong way to do that?
I don't necessarily think there's a wrong way. I think you gain more credibility by having the validation point. For ages, if you look at any of my videos, there's no validation point whatsoever, but I've still been able to build a personal brand. I don't think it's the be-all and end-all, but if you want to gain more followers and more trust quicker, then having that validation point is really important.
Yeah, cool. Okay, so it's a nice quick way to say, "Hey guys, like I've got something
I'm
important.
the real
Just
deal.
I'm the real deal, and this is why I'm not just some kid, some person on the internet with an opinion.
Yes,
I've got some,
yes. And
yeah,
you also
great,
have
some,
to be careful because an accountant isn't a protected term. So anyone can call themselves an accountant, but they may just be Dave from the.
wow, that is a great distinction to make, and I feel like that's something that a lot of people. So, okay, how do you get around that? That's about your being accredited, or like, how do you differentiate from Joe at the pub calling himself an accountant versus you? Hey, I've got some really valuable insight.
So I don't think you have to straight away. I just think by giving those validation points, it differentiates you from other people. So not a lot of people know that you have to be qualified. A lot of people just presume that you're qualified. There's lots of different professional bodies, but also people don't know that. They just look like a bunch of different letters muddled all together. So it's just important that you go, look, I actually know what I'm talking about because I spent X amount of years studying it and taking all these exams. And that's like really important. I would also say add value wherever you can because people aren't taught this sort of stuff at school. That's why I'm so passionate about financial education, because we leave school and we don't even know how to read a bill. We probably don't know what council tax is. We don't know what like a tax code is. We don't know what an emergency tax code is. All these things we have no idea. As an accountant, there is so many areas where you can add real value, and is basically how you would gain traction.
Yeah, fantastic. So it's almost looking for knowledge gaps in your audience and saying, hey, here's some information and hopefully find it valuable. So in your, let's say is that your first month of, you need to start with some validation points, make sure you're providing value. Is that coming up with a content plan? How do you structure this first month or two?
So I would say pick where your clients are. So for me, my clients aren't on Facebook, so I'm not going to make a Facebook account. If your clients aren't on TikTok, then don't be on TikTok. If they're on LinkedIn, then that's where you should put most of your energy. And in the first month, it's seeing what's working and what isn't working. And then in the second month, it's really like digging down on what is working and just like churning out as much content as possible. But also, a really good thing for quick wins is to talk about trending topics. So, for example, in the
Great.
UK the other week, we had a general election. So, I made lots of posts on different policies of different parties for finance, for tax, and that did well because it's a trending topic.
Wow,
And
that's
then
so
when,
cool. Okay.
yeah, and then when Labour came into government, I said, well, these are all of Labour's policies. And that did well because it's a trending topic.
That is very clever. It sounds so obvious, but I think the cool thing about how you've approached that is you're talking about a trending topic that is, I guess, topical in the news, not a trend on this social media platform. You're not like going through TikTok and saying, what are financial people talking about? You're saying, what's in the news from my financial point of view. That's really quite cool.
Yeah, because a lot of Gen Z, 44% of them get their like news from TikTok, which is
Wow,
crazy. And
that is
so
crazy.
people are more likely to TikTok something on TikTok than Google something on Google. So you need to be where they're getting their information from. Obviously, there's upsides and downsides and a lot of misinformation. But if you can put factual information on TikTok that people are finding helpful, then you're onto a winner.
That's a really alarming or intriguing, rather, statistic. Do you feel a sense of responsibility around if people are looking for news and I'm providing some sort of, maybe not news, but insight and wisdom to fact check yourself, to provide sources? Do you have that pressure?
Oh my God, all of the time. And accounting is so difficult because there's so many ifs, buts, maybes. Like accounting rules are so personalized to your specific circumstance that sometimes when I put something on social media, people go, well, this doesn't apply to me, or that doesn't match my payslip. And I go, well, I can't take everyone's like student loan percentages or plans into account. I don't know your exact pension contribution. Like it's more of just like just an estimate, for example. But then all the people be in the comments, this is wrong, this is like terrible. And you go, I can't cater to everyone, I'm sorry. But it is really important that you like fact check. For example, a couple of weeks ago, FCA took a few influencers to court because they were promoting financial scams online, and they got fined because it's like misinformation and you can't do that.
Wow. I guess as long as you're secure in where your information comes from and you can back yourself and back the information, you should be okay and not get fined.
I know. I'm just going to plug in my laptop quickly. I'll be 2 secs.
Yeah, all good.
Perfect. Thank you.
All good. So if we go back to our 30, 60, 90, our 3-month plan, so that kind of sounds like the first, is that 2 months? So the first month is testing and trialing and doing a lot of content, getting a lot of information. Second month is kind of checking that analytics, doubling down, doing some trending topics and putting trending topics through your point of view. What would you call your third month? How do you go from that, your point of view, to wrapping up that 90-day period?
I think it would, again, just be pushing out that content. Like 3 months isn't really a lot of time. And I would also focus then on bringing out your personality a bit more. I feel like at that 3-month mark, if it's going the way that it's going, feel free to be more personable than you already are. And also use that time to reach out to other creators and sort of build relationships with them as well, because that's so incredibly helpful to do. They'll probably give you helpful tips and tricks as well. And it will also build your network, which is so, so important. And so many opportunities come from building your network. And the power of network can really never be underestimated.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Do you ever collaborate with other creators on your content? Do you find that there's any value in sharing or collaborating or remixing ideas with others?
Yeah, all the time. So, for example, I met someone at an awards evening in April called James Wright, and he posts really helpful exam tips and tricks on YouTube and Instagram. And for example, we just did a YouTube video together talking about like debunking myths of being an accountant, and also talking about the AAT exams, which were the ones that I personally took. And all that sort of stuff is so, so important because it helps elevate your brand as well as theirs. And it's always just nice to do something with someone, because content creation, especially if you're doing it by yourself, can be quite isolating. And so it's always fun doing it with someone.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that as someone hosting a podcast, and you're a podcast host yourself, doing it with someone else feels entirely different to sitting there. If you had to sit in the room and talk for 60 minutes, it's a hard and tall ask of somebody.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah. Grace, this has been an unreal chat. I love all of your insights of the different channels, the different types of content, looking into your analytics. This is super, super full of value. I really appreciate your time. Is there somewhere that people should be directed if they wanted to engage with your content or reach out to you and your firm?
Yeah, so obviously we're just everywhere all the time. So Instagram, my business account is Hardy Accounting, and my personal is Grace_Hardy_. And on TikTok, it's also Grace_Hardy_. And obviously I'm just on LinkedIn as Grace Hardy.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time. Super generous of you to join us, and I can't wait to get all your insights into the ears of our audience.
Well, thank you so, so much for having me on.
Grace, that was amazing. Thank you so much. This was a total joy. You're a superhero in this world. I'm loving all the content and all of your insights. I really, really appreciate you taking an hour of your time to come hang out and chat with me.